So I can pull up the agenda real quick.
Yeah, no problem. Gina will not be joining us tonight.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so just to refresh myself, we're going to call to order and then I'm going to take roll and then
Correct.
hearing of the public and then we're adjourning.
Yep.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
Do you want to rename yourself? Because right now you're already.
Oh, geez. How do I do that?
Top, like in the top right-hand corner, there's 3 little dots of your little screen.
I got it, Jennifer. I'm doing it for you.
You know what? You're a lifesaver. Thank you.
Literally.
What? What can everybody? Okay, it does say Jennifer Moore. I was concerned what Zebra might name me. I don't know. Because I'm giving a grief today by being ill prepared with dead computer batteries. Okay, I'm good to go. Thank you, guys.
All right, would you like to call us to order?
Yes, Natomas Charter School Board of Directors meeting for December called to order at 5:34. I will start with roll call. Let's see. Karen Harding Davis,
Here.
Sean King.
Here.
Hi, Sean. And Gina is absent today. Maria Mejorado,
Here.
Preeti Merchant,
Here.
Jennifer Morgan, I am here. Ashante Norton.
Here.
Okay, is Mr. Core here today?
Yes, I'm here.
Hi, John.
Hi.
Gavin,
Here.
Max,
Here.
and Ollie. Looks like Ollie's absent today. Okay, moving on to item C, hearing of the public for items on the closed session agenda. Anybody who is here for that? Okay, sounds like we can adjourn to closed session at, is it 5:35? Anybody have the time?
5:36.
36.
Yep.
5:36, okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, we'll see you at 6:15. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I can hear you, Ziba. You're being awfully noisy.
Sorry.
No, I'm just kidding.
Your sound is good. You're all set.
I thought you were just chiming us to come back online.
Matter of time.
What? Oh, I mean, my teacher grading my fellow assignments. My teacher grading assignments I did well on. Okay. Take a run break. Oh, I didn't do it. No,
Team, we are just sorting something out with Jennifer Morgan on the other line. She's having a little technical difficulties. We'll be right back with you.
No problem.
We're getting closer. Okay. Okay, I'm hanging up now. Sorry, everybody.
Whew.
Phew.
Sorry, everyone. Zeba's a master.
I mean, I wouldn't go that far.
No worries. We're happy to have you here.
There was some gremlins overtaking every avenue of my communication the last 5 minutes, so I apologize for the delay. We have actually took some action during our closed session. We established our Executive Director Evaluation Subcommittee. By unanimous vote, it will be led by myself, Jennifer Morgan, and Ashante Norton. And as I said, approved by all members of the board.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Okay. Let's see. We will reconvene. Somebody can note that time. We have our student reports from VLA. We have Gavin. Gavin, can you start us off?
Yep, I got you. Okay, so for VLA, there's not much to report due to finals week starting and everything. But anyways, as the semester is coming to an end, we finished our Friendsgiving, which it was a little social event we did before our Thanksgiving break, where there was multiple activities we could do, like watching The Nightmare Before Christmas, play Scribble, which is like an online Pictionary game. We played Kahoot, or just simply chatted with each other in separate rooms. And then after Thanksgiving break, we're nearing the end of the first semester, so we're preparing for finals. Our teachers are making sure that students have time to prepare for finals by trying to lighten the workload and just providing as much support as they can, so students have that support they need to prepare for finals. And overall, VLA is just in a crunch mode now, so that's why we're not really hosting any more events for the rest of the semester, just because, we have to focus on our finals. And again, our teachers are there when needed, and the students are just doing the best they can to prepare for the finals coming this week. And that's my report. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Gavin. Max for Leading Edge.
Hi. So we don't have a lot going on right now during these times, but academically, we don't have any tests going on, but we are still learning the Constitution Amendments in Humanities, planets and solar systems in STEM, pen and ink techniques and expressions, and media literacy and tech. And we just recently had a Thanksgiving break, and our Christmas and New Year's break is coming up this week. And as we plan to come back to school, we were supposed to go after the break, but not anymore. But we are still talking about the policies and how we could be the safest we can once we go back. And web leaders are still meeting with their sixth graders every week to make sure they are doing okay during these times.
Okay. So Max, if you guys aren't having testing this week, when do you guys have finals?
We really don't. I actually do
You
not
don't
know yet. No, not yet.
They're on a trimester schedule.
Yeah, we are trimester set.
Oh, cool. Okay. All right. Well, if you weren't going to have finals, I was going to want to go to your school. Okay. Thank you, Max. Did Ollie show up? No. Okay. All right, Max and Gavin, thank you very much for your updates. I know there must be a lot of demands on your time right now, so you guys can go. You're welcome to stay, but if you go, do your work. If you don't have work to do, clean your room. Beyond that, I don't know. Tell your parents thank you. Wear your masks and socially distance, please.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
All right. Next up, hearing of the public for items not on the agenda. Going once. Okay, moving on, hearing of the public for items on the agenda. Okay, and can I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
I motion to approve.
Okay, was that Karen?
That was Preeti.
Oh, hi, Preeti.
Second.
Okay, that was our second roll call vote. Karen,
Yes.
Sean King,
Yes.
Gina's absent. Maria,
Yes.
Preeti,
Yes.
Jennifer, yes. Ashante,
Yes.
okay. Moving on. We have some consent items, and I believe we can approve these as a group. Is that correct?
Yes, they should be approved as a group.
Okay, any questions from anybody on the consent items? Okay, may I have a motion?
I so move. This is Maria.
And I'll second it.
Okay, roll call vote. Karen,
Yes.
Sean,
Yes.
Maria,
Yes.
Preeti,
Yes.
Jennifer, yes, and Ashante.
Yes.
Okay. Action items, section K. I think Anita has a financial audit report for us.
Hello, everybody. Sorry, I'm having technical difficulties. Now I can see you and stuff on here. All right, let me pull up our audit report. Okay, can everyone see my screen okay?
Nope.
All right. All right, so we have
Anita.
our fine.
Anita, sorry, we can't actually see your screen. I don't think.
Oh, sorry, I didn't present. Okay, sorry about that.
Okay.
Back here. Share. Okay, now can you see it?
Yep, now we can see it.
Okay, perfect. Okay. Got that from beginning. Okay. All right. So the auditors have finalized reviewing our 2019-20 financial statements. And so tonight we are going to be presenting the official audit report. So as a reminder, as an independent charter school, we do need to have a standalone audit that we need to have on file with our district authorizer as well as the county office. We use Clifton Larson Allen LLP, and they come out in every April to do a spring review, mainly to do reviewing of attendance and ASB. And then after we close the books, they come back out in October to wrap things up. And our audit is in the form of the Financial Accounting Standards Board, which is FASB format for charter schools. And our general ledger, as a reminder, because we are online with the county office, is under the GASB format, which is the Governmental Accounting Standards Board. So within our audit, we have a reconciliation to bring the two together. So with our financial statements, our official audit, I just kind of wanted to highlight some of the important pages in your document. Now, we do have a beautiful bound copy for you that Joe Wood has that we could mail to you or hand to you yes, there you go, Joe. Thank you for being Vanna. That we will get to you when we see you, hopefully soon on there. But in regards to this, I wanted to go over our statement of financial position, which was page 3 of the audit report. I am not sure what page it is in your packet. But with that, the statement of financial position is our balance sheet report. So
the board members, just so you guys know, it's page 63 of the board packet.
Okay, yes, thank you, Joe. So our total assets are over 31 million, and that jumped up quite a bit because of the new PACT Resource Center that we finalized. We added $8.7-ish million or so, so we have that. And then the next page is the statement of activities. The statement of activities is kind of like a profit and loss or income statement for like private industry. So the total net assets there is 29 million. And that's basically taking our total assets and subtracting out expenditures, depreciation, things like that. On page 6 is our statement of cash flows. And it really just confirms our ending cash balance. So with our total cash and cash equivalents for last year, we ended with 9.8 million. So pretty good balance there. Then the other information on here, the audit actually is really a wealth of information if you wanted to read it from head to toe. It also has important financial notes, which is our procedures listed in there. But as a board member and stuff, one of the things, the supplemental information items that you want to focus on is compliance statements. And so on page 17, you would see the schedule of instructional time. We must meet our instructional time requirements, the minimum requirements, as well as our average daily attendance that the financials are based on. Page 20 of that report is a statement of revenues revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance. And this page I like because it actually ties to our general ledger, where it confirms that based on our governmental standards, that the fund balance matches if you were to run a report off of our general ledger in our financial system. And then the next page is taking that FASB format and reconciling it down to the governmental format on there. So those are some items that you kind of just want to look at and make sure that, you know, pulling out your unaudited actuals, making sure everything kind of ties out. The other thing too is the auditors, when it comes to compliance, report or give their opinion. Now, a lot of these opinions are boilerplate. So they're starting on page 24 and continuing through 25 is the auditor's report on internal controls, which basically has a disclosure that says, you know, based on their limited scope of testing, they didn't find any deficiencies in our internal controls. 26 through 27 is the auditor state compliance report, which they reported no issues on that. And then what everyone flips to is the schedule of findings and question costs, which is pages 28 and 29 on there. So we're going to go over that in more detail in a few minutes here. But the summary of all of this is that on page 1 is the auditor's opinion. It's the standard boilerplate, but the good news is that they feel that our financials are fairly represented with no material misstatements on there. One thing on page 29 is you will see that there was a finding in this year regarding the unduplicated Lcff pupil counts. So on that, basically how that works, because we haven't had a finding in almost over a decade or so here, is that it states what the issue was. And basically it was 3 students that were reported on our CalPads as qualifying for free and reduced, which were actually had changed to paid status. So on there, you can see our response and what corrective action that we are going to have in place. Basically, in a nutshell, our data manager, when she is reporting to CalPads and stuff, we're going to be having the teaching and learning director, Laura Burial, also reviewing with her the data as a second set of eyes and making sure that everything is okay before submission on that. Now, since we do have an audit finding and stuff too, we have to report our corrective action to the district as well as the county office. And the county office has standard forms that we complete, and we will have to bring something back to you in January on their corrective action form. But basically, it will be pretty much ideally the same thing that's listed in our response on page 29 on there. And the effect of this was considered an immaterial matter. It resulted in $1,481 on there. So as far as what the auditors determined on that. And so that's it in a nutshell. And I'd like to basically thank all the NCS staff, but especially the business office for all the team effort that they put into to make this happen. Any questions?
Okay, if there's no questions, can I have a motion to approve the 2019-2020 financial audit report?
I'll move.
And
Sashante.
I'll second it.
Okay, we'll take a roll call vote. Ashante,
Yes.
Jennifer, yes. Preeti,
Yes.
Maria,
Yes.
Sean,
Yes.
Karen.
Yes.
Okay. Moving on. Anita.
All right, our first interim report. With this is our first budget update since we really adopted the budget back in June. We did a a brief update during what we call the 45-day period after the state adopted its budget. But this is really getting into all of the changes and what actually took place from what we guesstimated would happen last year for this year to where we're at right now on this process. So as a reminder for those who are new and listening in, this is also a required, one of 2 required reports that we need to provide to our sponsoring district as well as the county office. And that the budget is always a snapshot in time. So it's a living document as of the information that was available at the time that we filed the report. And so the first interim report really is looking at actual activity through October 31st of each year. So this is our summary snapshot that kind of compares our adopted budget to our first interim budget and the changes and the variance on here. So as a reminder, for this year, it's been pretty crazy, but we adopted our budget based on school services May revision assumptions that they put out on there. So the state hadn't really adopted their budget at that time, but at that time, they said, okay, you're going to get a COLA, but now we're going to provide a 10% reduction after we apply a COLA, which resulted in a net reduction of about 7.92% on there. So with that, for our adopted budget, we were projecting deficit spending of about 129,000, and then the 2 out years were more than that. And basically, that was flat funding at that time that the state for the May revise on there. Now, the state officially adopted their budget, and they said that they were removing the 10% reduction, but they were not funding the COLA, and they were only going to cap us on last year's ADA. So we had a lot of adjustments to do at that time, but it resulted still in more money to us, which was a great thing. Also, we didn't get to open up school as we had planned, and we had to really focus on distance learning and hybrid plans and stuff. So we have increased our expenditures to address some of those challenges for pupil learning loss, distance learning, and hybrid learning plans as well. However, you can see that we still are projecting a healthy fund balance. So the result or the change between the two is adding to our deficit spending of about 247,000. So we'll kind of go over some of the detail changes in the next 2 slides to kind of give you an idea of all the things that went on in there. But comparing both adopted budget and first interim revenues, we had an increase of over $1.3 million in there. And so the majority of that was the state's adopted budget for Lcff. Even though they capped us at last year's Lcff, we did not get that cut that they were expecting. So that generated some money. Also, which was nice too, in the state's adopted budget, was they gave us federal CARES Act dollars. That was over 663,000. And there was also 137,000 in the state portion of that CARES Act money. Now, in light of some of the rates changing for the adopted budget, we lowered lottery and our mandated block grant costs. And then the other significant change here is that based on our situation for campus being closed and stuff, we had to reduce our local revenue projections by over 679,000. And that's kind of a combination between our SCAPE program, our base program that's at Star Academy, what we were projecting for our new middle school program, the landing. And then there was a small adjustment for our Chinese classroom based on what the Chinese government actually funded us. And then we got $62,000 more in special SELPA money for special ed state revenues. On the expenditure side, you'll see that we had a decrease in, well, actually, I apologize for that. We have an increase of 1.5 million in expenditures. That's a decrease to our fund balance on there. Salaries and benefits, actually went up by 633,000. And that is a result of what additional services we put in place as part of our continuity plan for district learning facilitators, more technology for one-on-one computers, things like that, in these expenditures in the that are also part of the CARES Act fund. So our STIRS on behalf entry also went up by $70,000 because of the CARES Act money and our budgeted carryovers from prior year restricted funds. We increased materials and supplies of over 880,000. And a lot of that was due to technology, online software licensing and things like that, that we needed to have in place. And then capital outlay increased by about $9,000 to wrap up some equipment for the new PACT building. So with all of that shaking down, so you can see there's lots of increase in revenues offset by a lot of expenditures, but our reserves still remain healthy. So based on our fiscal reserve policy, we still have set aside a little over 10% for economic uncertainties. Our reserves are 50% of our total expenditures. And so you can kind of see that our reserves are made up not only of the economic uncertainties, but we also have reserves for cash and other operating expenses that we know are going to come up in the future on there. Now, this slide right here I added was new, and it's to talk about contribution. So since we added our special ed program, basically what contributions does when you show this is it's for those restricted programs that are not self-supporting, you take unrestricted dollars and you move them to the restricted program so that they can pretty much balance out. And so for special ed, we know that that is a severely underfunded program. And I wanted to give you an update on what we're contributing right now as of first interim for our special ed program. So it's about almost 1.2 million on there, and it's broken out by 3 different categories there. But also new this year, because of COVID and the pandemic and all of the campus closures, we're also estimating to contribute to the base program almost 30,000, and then also the landing program that never really kind of got off the ground because of campus closures on there. So with contributions like this, we just kind of want to keep an eye on it, but we also need to look at it as an investment for services for our students and stuff too. Because to make sure that we have the daycare available for staff and parents around too, as well as the additional SPED services that come up. A look at the multi-year projection based on first interim shows a little bit better picture than we had at adopted budget. So basically this represents flat funding. So when you look at the details, they are estimating a cost of living adjustment for both of the 2 years, but they're unfunding it. So, and what we did to be conservative, I should say, is that we kept the ADA projection the same, which is capped at the 2019-20 rate. Now, it's important to note that we did apply for the SB 820 application for growth funding, because at our adopted budget, we did plan for some additional growth. So we are still waiting to get an approval for that. And if we do, we will be revising our numbers. But we are fully staffed and have expenditures to support. Currently, we have over 1,900 students. So that's important to note too. So if, say, next year in the out years, we go back to getting funding based on our current year average daily attendance, then that's going to generate more revenue for us. But we are already, in our expenditures, we're already including the staff that's needed for those students as well. So for 21-22, we are projecting a deficit of $51,000. And again, we plan for the worst, hope for the best on there. At adopted budget, this number was actually over 500,000. On there. And then the second year out, we are projecting a deficit of over $500,000. But again, that number was, I want to say 1.7 million at the time of adopted budget. So our picture has looked a lot better. With the expenditures for the out year, we are still planning for step increases. It does not include any raises, but we also adjust for inflation, and we remove all the one-time costs like the CARES money and carryovers and stuff in those out years. So the bottom line is that we are still fiscally sound. We are projecting to have over $10 million for our estimated fund balance this year, which is 50% of total expenditures. Then the 2 years, again, 21, 22, over 10 million, which represents 53%. And then the third year out, dropping to 9.5 million, but still a really healthy reserve. For the cash flow balances, we're estimating to end with 7.6 million. This is about a $2 million improvement from what we estimated at the adopted budget. And then the second year out is dropping down to 5.8 million, and the third year out, 5.9 million. Now, part of the state's adopted deal for removing that 10% reduction is that the state had to add more cash deferrals on there. So these, the cash balances are dropping because of those additional state deferrals. So I wanted to include this slide that shows you what the value is for each year that the state is deferring for us. So in this year, it's about 2.8 million. The following year, it goes up to 4.4 million. And that's because in 2021, which is our current year, the state is giving us more education protection account or sales tax money. But then the following year, that percent of the EPA funds goes down. So that's why you see more state aid is deferred. This little chart shows you, I don't know if you can see my little cursor here, but we start deferrals in February, which is just almost 2 months away. And the amount that's deferred in February, we don't get until November of the next year. The amount deferred in March, we don't get until October of next year, and so on and so forth. It's kind of bridging on there. The largest amount that's deferred is in June, and that comes 15 days later in July. All right, so basically the next steps, our next budget update is scheduled for March, which will be our second interim report. Joe and I are planning to attend the School Services Governor's January proposal for 21-22 in January 15th, and budget development will start right then and will continue through May. And as far as the local control accountability report, that's to be determined on there, because they kind of did things differently in 2021. We don't know if we're going to go back to our regular LCAP plan. Any question?
Okay, no questions from the board?
Wow, okay, thank you.
Thanks, Anita,
Okay.
as always.
Okay, let me
Presentation.
get, okay. And I think I have this one for the next item, which Joe, I think will add some stuff to.
Okay, so real quick, let's take a vote on the first interim budget for 2021.
Oh, I should put it up here, okay.
May I have a motion?
I motion. This is pretty.
I'll second.
I'll second. This is Maria.
Okay, roll call vote. Karen Harding Davis,
Yes.
Sean King,
Yes.
Maria Mejorado,
Yes.
Preeti Merchant,
Yes.
Jennifer Morgan is a yes, Ashante Norton.
Yes.
Okay, moving on. LCFF,
So
Alright.
this, do you want to lead, Anita, or do you want me to lead? I'm happy to.
Yeah, whatever, Joe, whatever you want to do.
Anita told me that at this point she was like, "I'm going to be done presenting. I'm going to hand it over to you." So, I'm going to do my best interpretive dance of a chief business officer. But so the document in front of you that Ziba has up on the screen is our LCFF budget overview for parents. Typically, this is a document that we have created as part of our annual budget cycle. So normally in, at June, when you're doing the adopted budget, we would also be presenting an Lcff budget overview for parents. This year, this is a little different because of the COVID-19 pandemic. So we're actually doing the Lcff budget overview as part of first interim for our December 15th to meet our December 15th timeline. So when you look on the first page of this document, really what it's kind of showing on this page is just our total local control funding formula funds. So as you can see from this graph that's in front of us, we get about $16 million in Lcff funds. And a portion of those funds, around $846,000, are supplemental and concentration grant funds. And the intent with that money is it's really being used to support your students who have the highest needs. This is our unduplicated account population. Now, because we have a fairly low percentage point of unduplicated account students, we're under 40%, we actually can use these funds as a school-wide effort. So we typically have done that. The next page here, the next little chart here, if you remember back to earlier this fall, we didn't have an LCAP this year. Instead, we had a learning continuity plan. And so in the learning continuity plan this year, what we really had to articulate is how we were spending money on all of our students, but specifically our highest needs students. So from this little graph, you can see that from the learning continuity plan, we're spending $854,000 on the students as a whole. And then $468,000 of that is for our highest needs students. So if you remember back to the learning continuity plan, this is where we documented things like purchasing new furniture so that we can have the students physically separated when they're on campus, buying Chromebooks for all of the students, hiring additional staff like our distance learning facilitators. The idea being, what are all of the resources that we're going to use to support our students as we navigate this pandemic? So then that takes us to the next page, where this just talks a little bit about, I'll make sure I got my notes here right. Basically, what funds we received in the 2021 school year for our high needs students and how much we're actually going to be spending to support those students. So we received $846,000 to support our highest needs students in this year, and we're spending $1.1 million. And so the idea is that, these would be on some of the resources we just talked about for hybrid instruction, distance learning instruction, but additional support, hiring those distance learning facilitators, other curriculum material resources, that sort of thing. And then that takes us to the last graph on this particular document. So what this is really asking us is, so this is, if you look at the top, this always trips me up because it's at the end of the document. To me, this should be at the beginning of the document, but it's the way the state has it set up. So this is a reporting out of what we spent on our highest needs students last year during the 19-20 school year. So during the 19-20 school year, we had budgeted in our original LCAP that we were going to spend $1.1 million on our highest needs students. So these are unduplicated account population students. We actually spent a little less than that. We spent $1.06 million. And that difference of 86,000 was really had a lot to do with the closure. So when the campus is closed, the school's closed, there are certain supplemental staff that we didn't hire, maybe additional resources that we would have normally used to support those students. And so that really is the subtle difference between the two dollar amounts. So what will happen next is, assuming the board approves this Lcff budget overview for parents, we will send it off to the county. It'll be posted on our website. And does it go to Natomas Unified as well, Anita, or is it just
Yeah, it'll be included in the packet we send. Yeah. The other thing I wanted to mention, if I could chime in here, with the state and making this new template and stuff, one thing that you may notice in reporting out for 2019-20, this is pretty much our budgeted for our supplemental, they are now calling the high need students and stuff. But when you go back to this expenditure sheet here, we had a different direction to focus on for the learning continuity plan. But within the narrative here, we are spending or projecting to spend just as much this year with our supplemental dollars as we did the prior year. This graph just focuses on a certain part of the continuity plan.
So any questions Anita or I can answer about the Lcff budget overview for parents? All right, so with that, then we just make a motion to approve.
Okay, may I have a motion to approve the LCFF?
So moved. That's Karen.
I need a second, please.
I'll second.
Second. Second.
Got you, Sean. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, roll call vote. Karen,
Yes.
Sean,
Yes.
Maria,
Yes.
Preeti,
Yes.
Jennifer is a yes. Ashante.
Yes.
Okay. Moving on, I think we have Dr. Wood.
Yes.
Yeah.
So our next item is actually something you all are very familiar with because we spent some time going over this together last month. So the Board Governance Handbook is before you. Basically, Ziba took the edits that you guys asked for from our last conversation, made those changes, and it's here for approval tonight.
Okay, any questions? Ziba loves it when you give her, spelling corrections during the meeting, so. May I have a motion to approve, please?
I so move. This is Maria.
I second. This is Preeti.
Okay, let's have a roll call vote. Karen,
Yes.
Sean,
Yes.
my computer is stuck. Bear with me. Okay, Maria,
Yes.
Yes.
Preeti,
Yes.
Jennifer is a yes, and Ashante.
Yes.
Okay, thank you all very much. Dr. Wood, you have the floor again for an enrollment update.
So next is our monthly enrollment update, which is before you. And as you can see, as of CBED's date, our official number is 1938. That's in the bottommost row. Sorry, there we go. In the row it says total enrollment. As of the end of November, we are at 1932. There's some subtle differences with students kind of coming in and out and going. The biggest thing I want to highlight though here is I want you to look at that total enrollment row. It's a very important row going back to the first interim budget we just talked about. So as Anita mentioned, we were funded on 1827 because that was our 1920 number. It's also what we're budgeting with for the next 2 years because we hope that the state will go back to the previous funding, but we're not 100% sure. But we are staffed to really support that 1938. And so, next school year, as we look to, developing our budget for next year, we're going to be budgeting hopefully with revenues for the 1938 students in mind. And so that'll actually kind of adjust that some of those first interim numbers in the positive direction a little bit. And really, when you compare year over year, it's almost entirely packed in VLA. So it's no surprise to anyone understanding the pandemic. There's definitely a strong interest from families in our independent study programs. And that's already showing up in our early numbers for our application cycles. It's application season right now, and that's beginning. And while we are down a little bit in our site-based program, we're up like 200% week over week compared to last year for our 2 independent study programs. So I think, between some people still having obviously concerns about the pandemic and what the next school year might look like, mixed with finding out that independent study really works well for their child, I suspect we're going to continue to see strong numbers at both PACT and VLA in the next year or two. So that's the enrollment update. Any questions I can answer about it?
I remember saying if we build it, they will come, and that's coming true.
They've definitely come. And, it's something we might look at, depending on numbers and stuff, is we have that undeveloped space at PACT. That could be a space that we look at developing a little bit more with more offices and more classrooms. As of the way all the legislation stands right now, though, we do need to stay at that 80-20 split. So 80% of our students being in site-based programs and 20% of our students being in non-site-based. And with the numbers of site-based students, really, we're pretty much at full capacity for PACT and VLA based on that 20% number. But it's something that there's a waiver that we can apply for that we're kind of looking at to see if that's a possibility. And then we're also looking at what the state does. If they decide to extend distance learning another year, there is some conversation of that going on in the legislature. But we'll kind of have to, we're keeping an eye on it and sort of seeing.
Okay, and it looks like Ziva has inserted herself on our agenda with an important.
Just a friendly reminder that the Form 700s will be coming up. As you saw in your packet on the cover sheet, you'll be receiving the Form 700s in February, and they're due to be filed on April 1st. So I will do my best stalking version of collecting the Form 700s. You'll be hearing from me at every board meeting about this. And then as we get closer, once they release the Form 700s, typically like around February, early February, sometimes late January, I'll get those out, and then I'll just start blowing up your emails and calling you and texting you and doing all the things that I do.
And you do it so well.
And she will do it. Don't tempt her. I mean, I've heard. It's not like she's had to chase me down a million times.
Happy to do it. Job security.
Thanks, Eva. Joe, I feel like you probably don't have enough opportunity to speak about COVID-19. So would you provide us an update?
Happy to. Not happy with what I have to share, but I'm happy to present. Ziva, I'm going to share my screen. Is that okay? All right, so let me bring up the presentation here. So tonight's COVID-19 update is a little bit of a two-parter. I'm going to talk about public health information, and then Laura and the coordinators are going to come right after me and talk a little bit about how our kids are doing academically during this time. So in terms of public health information, so remember, we're working through our 4-stage plan for flexible learning. We're kind of stuck at this stage 2.5 right now. And maybe even have regressed a little bit into stage 3, unfortunately, because some of the closures that we have going on. But our goal is to get to stage 2, which is hybrid learning, and then potentially stage 1, especially now as we're learning more about vaccine timelines and that sort of thing. You know, maybe we will actually be able to get to stage 1 before the school year is over. We talked at our last meeting that really our plan for this transition to hybrid learning, whenever it can occur, is really based in 3 tiers: safety, consistency, and stability. And we're still keeping that in mind as we're starting to plan for different ideas and strategies. So if you remember back to a lifetime ago, which was called October, it really wasn't that long ago, we had talked about really using this December 14th meeting to look at where our numbers were at and make some determinations as to whether or not we would be able to stick to the January 4th timeline. Well, that decision has really been taken out of our hands. This is our cases per 100,000 residents for Sacramento County numbers. So just in order for middle and high school students to middle and high schools to be able to open up to students, we must be in the red zone. So if you look at this graph, there is, starting at the bottom, there's a yellow zone, then an orange zone, then a red zone. And then there was an equally sized purple zone, but the purple zone had to get a lot larger over the last month because our numbers have gone up pretty dramatically. So the last time we met together as a board, we were sort of in this area right here. We were between the 7.4 report and the 9.7 report, and it has just shot up dramatically since then. So we're currently, as of last week, at 32 cases per 100,000 residents in Sacramento County, which is very concerning because in order to get our campuses reopened, we have to be at 7. So just to give you a little bit of context, you know, we had started this, you know, sort of like the worst part of this was during the summer, and we were at 12. We did as a community get down all the way to 4.4, but then we've shot up to 32. And so that kind of makes our timeline very unknown at this moment. But we're going to kind of share what as an admin team we're thinking the timeline might look like and the process might look like. So, you know, and not only are we seeing increasing cases in the county, we're seeing increasing cases on campus. So we have been tracking, you know, the number of staff each week that have to quarantine, whether that's because they have symptoms, maybe they've been exposed, or the newest reason for quarantining was the travel quarantine. You know, if you happen to leave the state, when you come back, you have to quarantine for 14 days. And so what we've definitely seen, you know, through the month of November, but then more so in November, where these 2 larger spikes are, is some significant increases in employees having to quarantine because of exposure or positive cases or symptoms. And as we all know, right now we're in a regional stay-at-home order for the next 3 weeks. Schools are in this weird space of being exempt. So, we can still offer all of our in-person activities and be providing instruction and having employees, coming to school. But one of the things that we were starting to run into with our distance learning hubs is we had so many staff members the week we got back from Thanksgiving and then last week needing to quarantine that it actually became impossible to keep those hubs running. We also had some students that were being sent to school with medication. Students don't keep secrets. So, they say things like, I wasn't feeling good today, but my mommy gave me some medicine and told me not to tell you. We learn about that. It happened my first year of teaching when I was in second grade teacher, and it's happened every year I've been in education. So we had a little bit of that going on too. So we did, recognizing we need to keep those things staffed and, being concerned about the safety of our students and staff members. The distance learning hubs were largely stopped last week. There's some still running at VLA and PFA in a couple spaces. And then same thing this week. What we're trying to figure out right now is what we're going to do immediately following winter break. Right now, we've allowed all of our employees to work remotely starting on December 9th through January 4th. I would say about 50% of our employees are still coming to campus because they prefer this as a workspace and maybe need internet access or other materials, but about 50% are staying home. And one of the things that we're discussing right now, we're keeping an eye on the public health numbers, is that when we come back in early January, we may need to take 2 weeks and not run our distance learning hubs. And that's really going to be if the community spread continues to be at the rate that it is in the community, we're going to struggle to keep those hubs staffed, not to mention, concerns around possible cases with students, that would come to those hubs discovering that they had COVID. So we're going to be talking a little bit more about that as an admin team this week. We're planning as if those hubs are going to occur. We're making sure we have all the resources and materials in place, but we'll make a decision, if not at the end of this week, definitely on January 4th as to whether or not we're going to run those the first 2 weeks we get back. So it could be that we start distance learning hubs again the week of January 18th, but we're going to be figuring that out. So even though we're in this unknown space, we're still looking ahead to 2021 with being ready to pivot. So our teaching and learning department's been working with all the teachers on modeling lessons. All the grade level departments and teams have been meeting. We've been running all sorts of workshops with academies on health and safety, distance learning strategies, hybrid strategies. We've been doing some walkthroughs. We haven't deployed our final on-campus signage, mainly just because why? If we put it out now, the rain will probably wash some of it away. So we're going to wait until we get to a little bit closer to having students on campus. And then we want to be able to run something like an orientation where we can have middle and high school students come to campus, find out where all their classes are, know what the protocols are before the first day of school. And so we're still figuring out when those are going to be. So as a result, our original plan was that kids were going to transition to hybrid on the week of January 4th. That's not going to happen. So what we're communicating to families is that we're moving to this rolling timeline model, which I'll share on the next slide what that looks like. But basically, in a nutshell, we're going to continue to track the public health information. When we finally get back to the red tier as a county, then we would make an announcement to families that, here's our tentative restart date, and we're going to start the second semester in distance learning. While we're planning for the immediate, planning for the second semester, we're also planning for the long term. So we recognize, much like the larger community, that our students have been impacted by the pandemic, and there's only so much support we can provide remotely. We are very limited. I think the best analogy I heard from a teacher is like, it feels like we're dancing, but we have both of our arms tied behind the back and we're trying to grab our foot at the same time. And it makes it really hard to do all of the things. So what we're trying to start thinking about is what supports do we need to plan for our students long term. So let's say all the vaccines are able to get implemented in the spring, and if you will, this summer is something resembling what we're going to call normal or a pre-COVID experience. Do we run summer school programs, which we typically have not done at Natomas Charter School? And do we run summer school programs that are focused on credit recovery or helping high school students make up courses? What academic tutoring do we need to put in place? So the next presentation that Laura and the coordinators are going to be talking about is really looking at our academic data so far and helping us figure out, well, what's our next step? I mean, the first important step is just getting campus open, right? Getting our kids back here. That's really critically important. But once they're here, there's going to be probably some other things we need to do. And so really using our data that we have to figure out what that looks like. So getting back to this rolling timeline example, what the heck is Joe talking about when he talks about this rolling timeline? So this is a very hypothetical example to the right, but realize it's completely dependent on what people do over the next 2 weeks. If everyone in our community celebrates Christmas and New Year's the same way they celebrated Thanksgiving, these months may say March and April on them rather than January and February. If people in our community, though, heed all of the public health warnings and don't do mixed household gatherings, then there's a higher likelihood that this is going to be a January and February timeline. What we're hearing from public health is their best case scenario is mid-February. So that's kind of what we're planning with at the moment. So if you look at this little January and February situation to the right, so semester 2 begins on January 4th. All of these blue dates were in distance learning. The kids are starting in distance learning. We're going to hope that the county returns to the red tier around February 8th. So on February 8th or thereabouts, give or take a day, we would send an email out to families basically saying, hey, here's when we're planning on transitioning to hybrid. Our goal is to do it in approximately 2 weeks. It would require, it kind of depends on where this lands and if there's pre-scheduled holidays there and stuff that we've got to kind of work around. But let's say it was February. What we would probably do is send out the announcement on the 8th. Right after we come back from our President's Day weekend, we would do those early hybrid, those orientation days. And then the idea would be that Monday is when the transition to hybrid instruction would begin. So I think, the big thing I want the board to see here and any community members watching this to understand is that our goal is to get kids back on campus as soon as we can, as soon as it's safe to do so. We know it's what's best for kids. We've heard from kids, every single person on this call for the most part is also an NCS parent. So we're hearing it from our own kids that, really we need to pivot back to campus in the soonest way possible. There will also, there's a bill actually that's been introduced in the legislature that wouldn't surprise me if it made it through. That's basically going to require every school in California, every public school in California, to reopen to in-person instruction within 2 to 3 weeks of their county going back to the red tier. And so we're set up in very much the same way, should that bill actually happen to move forward. I bring that up because I have gotten the question from some community members about, well, could we just stay in distance learning the remainder of the year? The answer is no. I think we all recognize, first of all, that doesn't work for all of our kids. We need to get kids back who want to come back. But also, I think there's going to be some legislative action that's going to prevent that from happening. But we'll have to tweak and adjust a little bit depending on the holidays. So with that, any questions I can answer before I hand it over to Laura and the team to talk about academic stuff?
So Joe, I have a question.
Sure.
So you were saying that the legislative is looking at opening school for all students and going away with the option of distant learning.
Not for all students. The idea would be you're providing an in-person model that's in alignment with the public health guidelines. Okay. So in Sacramento County, we've been told to expect 6-foot physical distancing for the whole entire school year. So as a result, oops, sorry, let me stop this for a second. Get my camera back. So as a result, when we open to in-person instruction, we're going to have to be in a hybrid model. And we're going to have to be in a hybrid model until the county decides that we no longer need to do the 6-foot physical distancing. So in our case, if that bill were passed as currently written, we would transition to the red tier and we would have approximately 2 to 3 weeks to bring kids back on campus in a hybrid format. Mm-hmm. We can still continue to offer distance learning for the families that are interested in distance learning, and we would still offer that. Basically, for us, for Natomas Charter School, it's just going to allow us to execute our plan the way that we currently have it structured. Why this legislation has come to be, though, is there are some districts, primarily in Southern California, that have just said, we're going to say distance learning for the whole year. And the legislature is saying, no. We need you to prioritize in-person instruction. So that's why that's become a topic of conversation.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. All right.
Hey.
So if there's no other questions, I'm going to hand it over to Laura and the coordinators who are going to talk about how the students are doing academically during distance learning.
All right, and then Zeba is going to be our driver. So
Hello, it's nice to see you guys. I just wanted to start as we're looking at our academic achievement by reminding ourselves, what our theme is for this year. It's brave leaders, brave learners. And I think that has been a key to our success and our work this year, is just keeping that in mind, that we're all being brave by doing this. This has never been done before. All right, next slide. And also that even as we've been going through this very interesting COVID pandemic, we have always kept our school pillars as our foundation, putting students first, accountability, and innovation. And so, in every step that we take, that's what we ground our decision making in. All right, next slide. So looking at what are our challenges and what are we doing for that, one thing we were actually kind of worried about was attendance. And actually, I'm happy to report that we're at 99.52% for the school, which is higher than normal. Yes, yay! I like all the hands for us there. So that's great. That means that our students are engaged and working. And so the way that the attendance works this year is that students have two ways to get attendance. They are either going to their online synchronous time with their teacher, or they are completing some kind of work for that time period. So the state has set it up so that they have two options for how to do that in case they're having internet problems or something to that effect. So that's a bonus right there, that we're doing great. Some challenges that we've seen is that we are seeing students having a lot more missing assignments, more failing grades than we've seen in the past. And this is something that is happening nationwide. And there's articles upon articles about schools that are seeing this trend. And what we're finding is that it takes a lot of organization and kind of persistence as the students have to navigate all of this on their own, where they would in a traditional year have the teachers there helping them and supporting them and saying, hey, give me your paper. And right now they have to submit it on their own. We have been putting some interventions in place, but we're finding that those are less effective without having that connection with the student and having the student on campus. Normally you would just say, hey, you're coming in at lunch, we're going to work on this until we figure it out. And you have a lot more connection with the student, whereas now it's like, okay, come back online at this time, and it's much harder to have that effectiveness. We're also seeing a higher level of social emotional concerns with our students, as is happening across the nation as well. And especially with our upperclassmen, a lower level of motivation and engagement, which, especially if you think about our seniors that, are just on the cusp of going out into the world. And, many of them have gotten jobs. And so, it's kind of like, well, I'm not going on campus, so it's not as motivating. As always, whenever we face a challenge at Natomas Charter, we always come up with what are our interventions. We've been following the re-engagement process, which is our Mtss process, to when we see students that are not attending or not engaging, that we're working with them. We have had over 360 student support meetings. That's a lot of meetings in just a couple of months. So I have applause for our coordinators because they've been at all of them. So I really appreciate them. We have enacted our distance learning hubs. We have some hubs just for our special education students. And then we have a very in-depth special education office hours system in place on Wednesdays when the students are working more independently. So yeah, so we've put a lot of things in place. I wanted to share with you some diagnostic data because there was a lot of concern as we came through the summer about the COVID slide and where are the students. And so our Iready Scores, which is our diagnostic, we give each each August. And so you'll see that there's the fall 2019 and the fall 2020. And I was actually quite happy to see that it's not that different from what we saw last year. There is a little bit of difference in who took the test. And so, and the coordinators will talk a little bit about that as they pull out their data. We have some groups that we've given it to that we haven't historically, but it looks pretty similar for reading. And then if you could go to the next one, please, for math. And math, we are fairly similar as well. So, you know, that's good news that over the summer, we didn't see, because these were assessments were done pretty close to August, beginning of September for most of them. PFA was in October, but we didn't see a huge amount of slide. I know that a lot of us attribute that to the excellent teaching that our teachers were doing last spring amidst the craziness. And then we had some pretty great things for students to do as they went through the summer to keep their learning going.
Hey, Laura, for community and board members that haven't seen that data before, can you explain the difference in the colors on the triangle, like what each color means?
Absolutely. Sorry. Thank you for that. So if you're looking at the triangles, the green is the students who are at grade level. And so they're meeting the expectations for the beginning of that school year. So if you're starting in 5th grade, they're testing you on your 5th grade standards, where you should be at the beginning. The yellow is for students that are 1 to 2 grade levels below in their diagnostic testing. And then the red is students who are more than 2 grade levels below. So those, if you're looking at what are the traditional triangles look like, that is fairly typical. We want to have much less on the top and a bigger green, but for beginning of the year standards that the students have not yet been taught, that's a pretty good place to be starting, especially this year. All right, so what's going to happen next is that all of the academy coordinators are going to give you a little overview of their individual data and how they have put those supports and interventions in place. So first is PACT.
Hi. Okay, we can go to the next slide. So at PACT, we're just gonna go over, first of all, some overall things, engagement data for PACT, because we're already homeschoolers to begin with. One of the good things is that we're pretty good at teaching at home for the most part. One of the struggling things is that one of our usual duties of our staff members is to really keep families on task with getting their paperwork done properly and turned in so that we're all compliant. So we were a little bit worried about all that. So that's also how we count attendance. However, at this point, we are at a 99.77 attendance rate, which really just reflects a couple of families who couldn't figure it out the first time. We met with them, we fixed it, we're all good. So people are turning in their paperwork. We also, kind of as a side note, due to some of the extra requirements for tracking paperwork on a weekly basis, our families are actually meeting with their advisors every 2 weeks instead of every 3 weeks as we usually do. So this is both awesome because they can't get behind as quickly, but it also means that they're doing 50% more paperwork every year. So there's a whole packet to do every 10 school days instead of 15. So we're doing a good job collecting all of that documentation. We, in the first semester, offered 75 distinct workshop opportunities for students. And so what that means is with an average class size of 12 students, that we had approximately 900 synchronous student connection to staff opportunities every week. And our attendance was pretty good at those. 85% of our enrolled students are taking 1 or more workshops, and then the other 15% are just doing their regular meetings with their advisors and not doing the enrichment opportunities. In Project X, we expanded 6th through 8th grade, but we actually kept about the same size. So we had 36 students enrolled, which is 49% of our full packed middle school enrollment in grades 6 through 8. And then 33, so approximately 12 of those students have been participating for the last 6 weeks in some in-person learning hubs. They kind of were our pilots, and we've figured out some of the ins and outs of that and are expanding that out in January. thankfully, because of our small size, we've been able to keep those going. So today we had a small group of students in taking Iready tests. We have about 8 kids who show up at a time. And then attendance in our virtual Project X academic classes is almost 100%. It's very, very close, with the occasional kid who isn't feeling well missing. But this has been really good. And what that actually means is they have 5 hours a week of synchronous time with their core instructional teachers, and then 4 hours a week additional of office hour opportunities where they do a small check-in or have kind of a drop-in as you need help. So that's been very successful. Then for our data, as Laura pointed out, our data does not look significantly different from where it was last year. We have approximately, actually our data looks better, but I'll tell you why it looks better. It looks better because in previous years, we only ever tested new to PACT students in August. So if you were a returning PACT student, we didn't have you take the test in August. You waited till January, and we gave that then. This year, because of the lack of state testing and the need for some additional data points, we went ahead and tested all of our students in August, and they will all test again in January. So we have 2 clear data points. So that means that if you look at last year's August test in reading, 67 students took the test, whereas this year it was 191. So we do see an increase in our kids at and near approaching grade level, but that is because we added in on all of our returning students. So we would expect that to go up a little bit. It is encouraging though that it didn't slide backward. Math is also pretty stable with that, with our percentages. It's obviously a smaller percentage of students at grade level, but it's comparable to other years. It's pretty much what we see every year. We do have greater turnover year to year, so Iready data sometimes is very problematic for us, but I will say that we've had much less turnover this year, which is helpful to us for actually getting a good look at data. When we come back in January, we spend the first 2 weeks giving all of the students the Iready data again, and then we'll get a little bit of an update on where we are. But the Project X students did start taking those now. They take them before winter break just to kind of help us test out the system. And so far we have about a third of those kids are done, and they're showing significant growth in math and in reading. And so we are really excited. They're getting some of that one-on-one attention, and I think we just have more eyes on them. We were more worried about them, so we followed them around a little bit more. Just the analysis, we continue as a program to need more support in math, which we already know. And then some of the things being done, we're working on just making sure that there are frequent opportunities for families to connect with staff. Again, they're doing 50% more advising meetings. They are having opportunities. I do a monthly check-in. There are ways for them to connect with each other. We're doing many, I don't know what to call them, many SSTs, but also many kind of mini SSTs. So the small version, where we'll bring additional support staff into a regular advising meeting just to address one particular growth area. So very personalized intervention. And then we talked about the in-person learning hubs. So overall, things are going well. Enrollment is steady. Families report being happy. Students are happy. People are participating, and we all miss each other. They'd all like to come back and do a field trip, but other than that, they're all hanging in there, and we're feeling good about where we're going.
Thanks, Alicia. So I think I just want to thank everyone for the opportunity to present today. I know it's the end of a long Monday, but as we're throwing a lot of data at you, I think I want to also just take a second to recognize our staff and our students and our families. We know the burden that this whole situation has placed on students and families. And even for VLA, who 60% of the time in a normal year learning is done online, this was a big shift for us. On our end, I think we're really fortunate that we spent a lot of last year building structures that have really come in handy for us this year. We obviously couldn't have predicted a global pandemic, but as I'm going to go through the slides, I'll point out how they have really supported students in their learning experience. So we have, again, very much like Alicia, our attendance is tracked a little bit differently. So the number is really, really high. It would honestly be 100%, except for maybe 2 cases of students very early on in the year. I wanted to just share out that both students and their parents had indicated high levels of engagement with their online learning and their classes. It's been a fantastic to just pop into workshops this year and see all cameras on, students engaged and actively learning. And I think one of the things that we've preached at VLA has been consistency and just trying to keep things as steady as possible despite all of the uncertainty. So next slide. So here are Iready results. One of the, I think, big important pieces here for VLA to note is that we have a lot of new students this year. We had a lot of new students that enrolled or applied even prior to the pandemic and got a little boost once March hit. And as a result, you can kind of see that we do have some more students in that tier 3, 2 or more grade levels below. The pandemic is hard for all students, and I think our data indicates, just as kind of everyone else's, those new students do face more difficulties. They're not in that routine of independent learning, of the structures of VLA, and so we spent a lot of time really working to support that. There is a strong correlation between our 2.0 list and the data that is in those charts, and I'll talk a little bit more of the 2.0 list in another slide. From this data and from our staff working together collaboratively, we've also started to identify some indicators of success so that we can implement an SST and really trigger student supports even sooner than we are already doing. So next slide, sorry about that. So again, I think I want to again point out that we do have a higher number of students on the 2.0 list than at any other point since we've been tracking it. But it's also important to note that this is really the first semester of our MTSS process where we are actively tracking that 2.0 in a real structured and equitable way across all grade levels. And so you'll notice that it was extremely low in the spring of 2020. Obviously, with the hold harmless grade policy happening very early in the semester, that's not necessarily an accurate reflection of where students maybe were at, but again, because of the grading system. It's also important to note that our 2.0 list is not just below a 2.0. We actually include students that anybody that has a D or an F, and then in order to get off of that 2.0 list, they need to be on there for over 2 consecutive grade check periods, which is a period of 4 weeks. So what does that actually do for us? So we check grades, and then from there, we really start to implement our support system. And we've had 37 different students that have had an SST this semester. And what that looks like is a team meeting with the academic coach, the other staff members, potentially our social emotional counselors, and really directing them to the structures that we already have on campus. You'll notice that we've had a total of 51 SSTs. That is because some students have had multiple SSTs throughout the semester, and then our IEPs and 504s. Next slide. And then one of the things that I think has worked for our advantage is very early on in the SST process, we've been able to actually start bringing students back on campus. In a normal year, that is usually our first step. And so we do recognize that the amount of supports we can provide is somewhat limited. But we have right now about 24%, almost 25% of students, all of those that are really our higher needs students attending learning hubs. And this has been happening since early October. And we actually have scaled up to the point where we have 2 different cohorts coming for a single half day and have started looking at what are our next steps. Some data is just now coming in. Our semester wraps up on Friday. Again, typically the SST process, the goal of that is to prevent students from being below a 2.0 at the end of the semester. And, again, with the semester wrapping up, we're anxious to see kind of where students will fall at the end of the semester. But some early indicators, particularly coming out of our bridge and support classes, is showing that students are making academic growth. So that's something that we've really been excited about. And then on the teacher side of things, they've been looking at their current policies and procedures and really looking at how we can continue to support our students going into semester 2. And they've been having some great conversations on their end. All right, thank you.
All right, for Star Academy. Switch. Oh, got moved out of order a little bit. Ziva, can you go to the next slide? There we go. Okay, and then I'll go back to that slide in just a second. So to start off with, I just wanted to give kind of a really quick snapshot of how our students are doing. And this is our Iready data, and it's comparing last year fall to 2019, and then winter for 2019, which it was given in December
to this year of fall, which would be in August, for 2020 to winter, which we just finished this about a week and a half ago or a week ago. And you can see that the numbers, if you compare fall of 2019 to fall of 2020 in reading, our numbers are almost identical with just 1% difference. And then if you look at our math scores, same way, but I would say our math scores are doing just a little bit better this year in fall 2020. And I will talk about why we might be seeing that. And then for our winter scores, you can see that those are fairly close to what they were last year, very close. And then on both reading and in math. So Ziva, if you want to go back a slide. Sorry. So getting more of our data, part of it is engagement. We have 99.73% daily attendance. We've been holding parent monthly meetings, and these are actually every week at first for the first, I think, 2 months, 2.5 months. And then we switched to once a month, and these are led by the grade level or the teacher of the classroom, and to help parents are kind of figuring out what parents might need so we can make adjustments in the moment. And then our specials programs, art, Spanish, library, and Kind Kids Club, we have those going. All students attend all 4 of those specials every week, which really helps with engagement. And then we've done art contests and spirit weeks. Forward. So in addition to this, we have been having, for our re-engagement, our MTSS process. The MTSS process is where we track our data and we look at our individual students weekly to see who needs what supports. And there is a team of us working together. It's the grade level plus our special education team, myself, Ms. Hines, our social emotional counselor. And we look at what does the student need based on academics and then what we're seeing from teacher recommendation and parents, and we build a plan for them. So currently we have about 3.6% of our students in that MTSS re-engagement process. And the re-engagement process is something for this year that has been started with being on distance learning. That was put into place where we're tracking to ensure that our students are being successful. So these students have individual plans that support their engagement and academic success. And then so far this year, we have done 24 annual IEP meetings, and we still have a few more to go. We have 2 SST meetings that we have done this year. On the formal level, there have been some informal ones. And then we have 25 active SSTs, and we have about 9 504s that are all medical related.
Amy,
just a second.
Oh, sorry. Or Laura, you go ahead.
Yeah, so we had a comment requesting clarification on what the IEP, SST, and 504 means. And so just to clarify, you're doing fine, but the IEP is an individualized education plan for students that are in getting special education services. And so those are a meeting with all of the stakeholders. And SST stands for Student Success Team. And so that's where the teachers and the parents get together to discuss what are the hurdles the child is facing and how to support them. And then the 504 plan is for students that might have learning or medical issues that are hindering their learning. And so it's another level of supports. And so that would be the same type of thing where you have the teachers and the family meeting together to find some strategies for success. Was that what you were jumping in for, Mr. Wood? Okay. All right. Sorry, Amy. I just want to clarify that.
So used to academic terms that I forget that I should give some context. So given all of this kind of background information, what we have seen, our analysis overall, is that our students are making typical year progress so far. From fall into our students were actually about where we would anticipate them to be, but not where we expected them to be given the shutdown since spring. So that made us happy. And then to also see that over the past few months that they've been growing at pretty much the typical rate is great. It is also telling us that our structures that are in place and our systems are working. And our families, one thing that is a standout is we are having families that are concerned and that are reaching out about the social emotional health of their students. Whether they reach out to the classroom teacher, myself, or Ms. Hines, we have noticed a little bit of an uptick in that. And then some of our interventions that have been doing, you can actually see these pictures here are from our learning hubs. The one with the gorilla or monkey is our TK kindergarten group for the learning hubs. And then the other one is our 4-5 group that is coming in. We have been doing small group instruction for every grade level, every class, to really meet the students' needs. And this is done during office hours and during the day. When students are working independently on something, the teachers are calling small group, and they do that in breakout groups on Zoom, which is working very well. And we're actually going to be increasing that even more and more supports with our distance learning teachers that are, or distance learning facilitators that are coming in to help support the distance learning teachers. We also have one-on-one office hours for all of our students to access their teacher. And then our counseling support. Ms. Hines has been doing a phenomenal job supporting parents with resources and within the community and counseling if parents need help and support with maybe how to parent or how to cope with stuff that is going on right now. And then she's also been offering support to all of our students through the Kind Kids Club that she runs every week with every grade, in addition to counseling and other supports for our students.
You think I would have been prepared to unmute? I figured it out. So Leading Edge, there are some of our Tyco kiddos back in the day when we could be together. Oh, my things got moved around. Okay. No, it's okay. I can figure it out. Yeah, overall things are pretty positive in many, many ways. Great attendance, like everybody else has been saying. We survey the kids every other month, and overall close to 90% reported feeling happy or excited about school, at least sometimes, if not frequently or all the time. And so, less than 10% of kids were saying that on a regular they weren't feeling that way. And then similarly, when we look at like assignment submission and assignment participation, on average, it's pretty high. I have some links there for you guys. I have more detail in some of this data. If you want it, let me know. Next slide. I don't know where we're at. Okay. So I have the same Iready data as everybody, and you guys can see that it's very, very similar. But I actually have been for a few years doing something different with our Iready data. And instead of looking at our overall class trends, this is a little bit compulsive of me, but I track each kid and I look to see how much growth each individual kid made. So, maybe you're still two or more grade levels behind, but you've actually come up, 2 or 3 grade levels. So we have a number of kids who started at a 2nd grade level and they're now at a 4th grade level, and that is still quite behind. So they're still in the red, but they've made quite a bit of growth. And so what I was able to do with that is at least 75% of our students made at least 1 year of academic growth from August of last year to August of this year, which is really good. That's kind of a growth goal that we've been setting for ourselves. And what's also really fun about that is when I look at our special education students, they're actually showing the most growth of any of our groups of students. And really, this is attributed to a lot of things, but we added Iready instruction this year. And while it is certainly not everybody's favorite thing in the entire world, I do think that it is having a really big effect. So I think that's part of what we're seeing. Next slide. The grade data is a little bit different. So at our mid-trimester, if I looked at kids who were earning failing grades, they were almost to the number exactly the same as last year. But then by the end of the trimester, it was very, very different. And so really what we saw is where usually that mid-trimester would be a turnaround point for kids, it wasn't. If they were failing, they just got deeper in that hole. And the interventions that we put in place, because this has been said by many of my colleagues, we had so many SST meetings, we put so many interventions in place. The interventions were just not effective in the setting that we're in right now. And when we look at it, like the kids that are earning failing grades, it's almost entirely missing work. So next slide. So where we're at, okay, sorry, I was just things got moved around. So yeah, I had a different stuff on the slide before. Really what I would say, if we kind of looked overall, if we sort of summarized where I think we're at, is our kids are doing as well as can be expected, but our bag of tricks is running a little dry, and their energy and their ability to sustain what's going on, both kids and staff, is running a little low. We're super fortunate to have 3 distance learning facilitators start this last week, and they've already really been inspirational and kind of revitalizing our energy. They're new, they haven't been doing this for 9 months, and so they have a lot of new ideas. And so we're looking at how we can integrate them into like more creative ways to build connection and build relationships and build meaning and purposefulness and just kind of the fun things, as well as doing some of that remediation, and then also staffing our support hubs. And yeah, that is, now I don't know if that's my next slide. Okay, that's my last slide.
Okay, so for the Performing and Fine Arts Academy, so some good news. We've had 99% attendance rates. We've also had multiple virtual ASB events, and in the fall, we had our first virtual showing of our play. And these are just some pictures of our students from our hubs. And as you can see, they're all wearing masks, and they have their Chromebooks, and they're all physically distanced. So we have found that our hubs were successful. And so we're hoping to expand on them next semester. Next slide. So in terms of our Iready data, the trends kind of show at the middle school level that 57% of students in 2019 were at the green tier, which is at grade level. And then at the beginning of this year, it went up to 62%, which is great. But I do want to note that this is later than in normal years. Last year we took it in August, and this year we took it in October, and students did take it at home. It's also important to note that our students who were at the tier 2, so they're almost at grade level, actually went down, and our tier 3s also went down as well in reading this year. So that's really good news there. In terms of reading, we have incorporated Iready instruction for all students who are two grades and below. Next semester, all students in middle school will be doing the Iready instruction. For math, very similar data as well. We have more students in the tier 2s and less students in the tier 3s. And currently all students are in math doing Iready instruction. So we're going to continue with that next semester as well. We've also done data checks with all of our students so that they can understand the data and develop goals to improve for next semester as well. And we've had various support meetings. We've had 30+ SST meetings where we've discussed some strengths, concerns, and developed action plans together as a team with the teachers, our counselors, and also parents and myself. And we've had multiple IEPs and 504s. Next slide, please. Our high school students all took the MDTP for math. And so some trends that we are noticing is that there is some learning loss from the 2019 to the 20 school year and the material that was covered during the shutdown. So as we analyzed our data, we found that the main areas of need were functions, linear equations, and geometry. And so what we've done as an intervention for the first semester is we've rearranged some content to support the skills gap. And we're covering our missed skills in conjunction with the current skills. Many of our teachers have one-on-one office hours time with their students. We've also incorporated some peer tutoring through a senior project. And we also are encouraging our students to attend our distance learning hubs. And these are pictures of our amazing math teachers. Next slide. Grades, it's a little different, just like my colleague has shared. And so what we think is going on is what I did was I analyzed all of the grades data. I spoke to some students through some focus groups. I also analyzed all the emails that I've received and teacher conversations, and I took all of that and I developed some buckets of why is this happening? Why do we have 28% of our 8th grade students currently with 2 or more D's and or F's? And it's coming down to a few buckets. And the first one is motivation. The second one is a specific learning need. Mental health is a big one right now. Access and or additional responsibilities. Many of our students are reporting that they're having to care for siblings or they've taken on a job at the high school level at least. And then also one of the other bucket is they're not doing the Wednesday work due to various reasons. And so as we're kind of looking at what we've done so far, we've done some hubs, we've done data chats, we've done Iready instruction, we've done one-on-one office hours, we've had various SST meetings, 504s, developed plans together. We've even had our distance learning facilitators begin to work with our struggling students as well in a virtual setting. So as we look at that, and as we're heading into semester 2, some of our focus items are our teachers are auditing their grades with the focus on our content standards. We're looking at possibly some no credit versus Fs, and we're developing some individualized plans for those students at the middle school level. We're also assigning academic intervention in lieu of an extra arts class next semester, and mandatory on-campus workspaces for our struggling students. So at PFAA, we've hired 4 distance learning facilitators. So the plan is to have these students that are struggling on campus next semester, hopefully as soon as January 25th. That's our goal. And the goal would be that they would use that time during their unscheduled time to work on skills, motivation, bringing in our counselors as well, and also working on work completion for semester 2 as well. I'm also looking at possibly doing a summer bridge program this summer for our middle school students. And so I'm still in the early stages of planning for that. High school. So at the high school, very, very similar to the middle school data, except some differences are that one of the additional buckets as to why some of this is happening with our data is that some of our seniors and our juniors have taken on jobs. And so to them, that has become a priority at this time. And there's also the bucket of we're not sure why they're not motivated. And so we're trying to connect with them and we're trying to determine, what the why is. We've reached out to them, we've reached out to parents, and parents are also mentioning that they're not sure either. And but with regards to the buckets being besides having jobs and unsure, all the other buckets are the same. We're seeing motivation as a problem, mental health, access, and then not doing Wednesday work as well. Very similarly to middle school, the same S1 interventions that we put in for middle school with the addition of some peer tutoring as well at the high school level. And so as we wrap up semester 1 and we're looking towards semester 2, very similar to semester 1, with the addition of a possibility of a credit recovery program next semester, looking at giving options to students on campus to retake a course. And also we are looking at providing incompletes to some of our students who are failing so that they have some additional time to complete their assignments. And we're also looking at possibly having a summer school program as well this summer to allow our students to retake some of their courses. And finally, for our seniors in particular, we're going to be meeting with our seniors who are struggling and developing some individualized grad plan meetings with them in terms of determining, okay, what do you need to do? How can we help you? What are we looking at? Are we looking at summer school? Are we looking at credit recovery? But all of that comes back to our teachers first needing to audit their grades, developing plans with the students, and then next semester looking at adding additional supports in place, such as credit recovery, summer school, and allowing students to retake some courses as well. Next slide. And so I've already mentioned all of these next steps, but basically in a nutshell, relooking at our MTSS process and making sure that we're hitting everything that we need to, continuing to be very communicative with our parents. I think the feedback that I've received is that that they appreciate the constant communication. And so we're going to continue that, really expanding on our SST meetings to bringing our students back onto campus using one of the action items or supports that we provide, that we're bringing students back on campus. Using our distance learning facilitators to really support us in that mission, and then continuing to research and also offer additional interventions and remediation options in January. And then we're also going to continue to use our interim assessments, which are our blocks, interim blocks through SBAC for our 9th through 12th grade students. And then my hope is that we can expand our distance learning hubs in January to 2 to 4 days a week, targeting our students who are struggling and needing extra support.
Hey, thank you so much. I really feel like we should give the coordinators a round of applause because they've been working nonstop since March and putting together lots of interventions and opportunities for staff to build their skills and things. I just wanted to, share that, while we're doing a lot of things to support the students, that we are also working very hard to support our staff, because we know that this is not an easy task we are asking of them, for them to do distance learning and plan for hybrid. So we've had a lot of different trainings that we've gone through, support in whether it's Zoom or Google Meet or Schoology, in working with them. And then of course there's my IT team down there. We have put out a lot of technology and technology supports for our students. We went from some devices on campus to now we've given out over 1,200 Chromebooks, over 260 iPads, and tons of hotspots, which then our IT team had to kind of pivot and be ready to do support for not just the staff on campus, but the families and the students as well. And they've just been great at setting up that support and working with the devices as they come back in, sometimes in some pretty sad states. So that's been a lot of work to support them. Next slide, please, Ziba. We also have been working very hard to keep, as an admin team, to keep our staff excited. Without seeing the students on campus, it's a little lackluster in how we are going through our days, because that usually the students seeing them on campus is what really feeds our souls as educators. And so we've been putting together some different activities to get the staff to come together and continue with that NCS community and support. Next slide, please. All right, so looking ahead, you guys got hit with a lot of data here. Some major themes that we have are there have been some academic impacts through the pandemic, whether it's how the students are faring with their social emotional or their executive functioning as far as getting the work in. We have though been providing some very high quality distance learning. The teachers have been working to make sure that they are making changes and adjusting to support the students. We have come a long way since March 13th when we closed down, and we have innovated and learned a lot there. We're always tracking and monitoring the progress of our students, making sure that we are meeting their needs and checking in with them. And of course, we are putting together a lot of different types of support structures. There's a lot of office hours. There's more office hours this year than I think there's ever been in the history of Natomas Charter School. Lots of family nights, lots of surveys, and those student support team meetings. We have really been kind of in overdrive trying to support our students. So moving forward, as Joe said, our goal is to get our students on campus. We have found that while some students do better in the distance learning environment, many of our students really need to be on campus and get that daily interaction and that daily support with their teachers. So we're going to, in the short term, really refine what we're doing, create those in-person supports as allowed by Sacramento Public Health, and look at the progress of the students. So that is, definitely something that we're doing. Dr. Gandhi was just talking about how the teachers are doing audits of their, of their course and their grades. And so that is a major focus. But really looking long-term, we are not letting this opportunity pass us by for innovation and to really look at how can we reimagine education and learn from this so that we can come out of it with an innovative solution to support all students in whatever comes next in our future. So we are moving forward. That's the essential thing. Yes, next slide is fine, Seema. Does anybody have questions? I know that was a lot of information.
Well, I don't have a question, but I just have to commend you all for the gathering the data, for analyzing the data, and coming up with some solutions to try to make the most of what situation we're in. So I just have to commend you all.
Thank you. Ashante, do you have a question?
I did. I know in Amy's report, there was a slide that talked a little bit about some of the parent meetings and having to address some concerns in real time. So I was wondering if you could share a little bit about some of the issues that maybe the parents brought forward that we needed to either address or make some adjustments, on our part, and if any of the other academy coordinators have some examples of things parents raised that we needed to address.
I'll hand that to Amy.
So for STAR, they were actually on a pretty small level. It was more making tweaks to stuff within the classroom, since that's the level at which these meetings have been held. So for example, it was let me back up. Our teachers, every single teacher for every grade level creates a slideshow presentation for the day for their class. And each day they just update it. It has the links for the students and the materials that they need. Within that, parents have asked, it was a little clunkier at the beginning, and then they gave feedback. So, well, there's multiple spots that you have links and it's kind of confusing. Can you condense that down to maybe 2 links per day kind of thing. It really depends on the grade level. Most parents have just given very nice feedback and are very supportive and happy about how things have gone. But it's just small tweak kind of things. Whether some of the upper grades, I've heard a little bit more on the lines of how are you going to get the kids to be able to connect and have that more interaction? So they've built in more and more times for breakout groups within the class. So stuff like that. Nothing major.
Okay.
And just provide a little clarity. Basically what the teachers were doing was, imagine back to school night where you go to your teacher's classroom and you hear about what your kids are going to be doing in class for the year. They basically were running a back to school night every single week. So here are the things that your child's going to learn about this week. Here's the activities. It's also an opportunity for parents to exchange ideas with one another. Like, here's how I have the room set up. Here's how I have the room set up. And then, as Amy mentioned earlier on, they started with weekly. They did that for like the first 2-3 months. And then now it's kind of gone to monthly at this point because parents were feeling that they kind of had a good routine and rhythm and that sort of thing.
Okay.
And I think for the other academies as well, it was just the feedback of, what needs to be clarified maybe, or sometimes, the students understand it, but I know, this year, having to be more into Schoology, as a parent, to support, your student. And so I think it's more of that type of clarity rather than like big sweeping changes. Some parent education in that.
Thank you.
So I have a question, probably directed mostly at Dr. Gandhi, but also Laura, you mentioned innovation in the solutions we have for our students and kind of reimagining what we're offering to them.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Gandhi, you said, you mentioned additional time for the students to turn in stuff that they're missing, right? In lieu of an F, they'd get an incomplete. Have we looked at different ways for the students to exhibit the mastery, as opposed to just trying to expect of them what didn't work during the year?
Yes, so many of our teachers right now are working with the students to determine if there's alternate ways for them to show mastery. So in certain situations like a foreign language class, if they're able to verbally express that they understand the language or that they understand the alphabet in that language, then they can just come to office hours and they can show that they understand it verbally. So we are definitely, in each individual teacher, part of the auditing of the grades process is to also look at, when you're looking at your students who have an F, those students, is there a different way for them to show mastery? And so working with those students to determine, okay, can you come to office hours and show me verbally, or show me with a picture, or show me in a different way that you understand the standard that we are trying to address. We are currently doing that in foreign language. We've also done that in our bio classes as well, some of them, and our health classes. And also our teachers are really using this opportunity to really look at what are the essential assignments and really trying to hone in on what are the key essential assignments that I need you to complete. So we've started that process, and then in semester 2, the plan is to refine it from a Schoology standpoint, but also from an instructional standpoint by really just making Schoology have just the key assignments on there so that parents and students aren't being overwhelmed with the number of assignments that they see on Schoology. Does that answer your question, I hope?
Yeah, it does. I appreciate it. And I'm really happy to hear that we're looking at that. I think that it's going to be important for our students who learn differently that, we have some safety nets in place for them and some supports, because sadly, just because the semester is over doesn't mean it's suddenly going to be easier for them to complete those assignments because they have an extra month, for example. So I'm glad that we're looking at that.
Yeah, and it's really, Dr. Gandhi explained it well. It's looking at what what does the student need to do to show mastery, not all the little things that, you know, maybe have been piling up for the students. So it is really nice to give the students that opportunity.
Yes, thank you guys. And I know how hard you're working, so thank you very much.
I had another question if no one else wanted to go. This is really, I think, for our high school team. You know, that 28%, I think it was seniors that had D's and F's really jumped out at me, and it's causing me some anxiety, especially because, you know, this is their last year. They won't, you know, have an opportunity to do a summer bridge, and they're really at such a significant crossroads in their lives. And so it's probably a bit premature to have some data concerning, you know, what our seniors are planning to do. And if there's any concern that, you know, some of those seniors may not be applying to colleges, you know, whether it be, you know, community college or, you know, four-year university or seeking out internships. You know, is there anything that we have in place to kind of make sure that that support is there for those seniors?
Yes, so my plan actually is seniors are going to be the first group of students that are going to be coming onto campus starting January 25th. And I'm working with the academic counselors right now to make sure that we are implementing Odyssey-ware or some sort of credit recovery program that our seniors can take during their unscheduled time on campus next semester. We've also been providing many of our seniors incompletes so that they can also come in January on campus and complete some of those incompletes and make them passing grades. We're also looking at allowing our seniors to go to Options for Youth during the actual semester. And then I'm also looking into having an in-house on-campus summer school this summer as well. But the short-term answer to your question is that our first thing that we need to do is I need grades to be submitted on January 6th. Once grades are submitted on January 6th, the counselors and I are going to sit down and look at how many students failed, how many of the seniors are incomplete, and then we're going to bring all of those seniors onto campus first and develop individualized plan with them, with the hope being that they get back on track and they finish strong. So my goal is to have every single senior graduate in June. And so that is my goal. But in order to do that, I'm going to first bring them onto campus January 25th, have them attend our distance learning hubs 2 to 4 days a week, and then have individualized plans for them with 3 options. They can complete their work from the first semester with the incompletes by February during their unscheduled time, enroll them into some credit recovery classes on campus with the facilitator available there to support them. And then the long-term option is summer school on campus if we can provide that.
And I can, maybe it's an economy of scale, but I know the other piece of your question, so I just wanted to maybe speak at least from the VLA perspective. One of the things we're excited about is every student is still working through their senior experience. I know that that's also a piece of PFAA. And I know that students were able to identify community projects. So that's one way that students are still staying engaged in the community. I know that was another piece of the question that at least I want to just share kind of what we were doing at VLA.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. There are no other questions. I'll hand it back to Siba.
Oh, I just had a question, sorry, for Kevin, or actually, are you there, Kevin? Oh, it might not be a good time, but
no,
yeah,
it's okay.
yeah, hi. You mentioned about your engagement and how you have a lot of videos on. you know, in your classes. And I was just wondering if you might share what you attribute that to. And yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think the first thing is just the engagement and kind of the expectations that we have for students. That's been kind of a learning norm that we put in place since the end of last year. And so, I mean, that's just been something that if a student is not engaging and not connecting to their teachers, then we just kind of go through our MTSS process. And, you know, I think the cameras on is the first step in that process.
Want some milk?
Okay, let's get you some milk. Sorry. So I think I answered part of that, but again, it is, you know, that's been a norm at VLA since last year. And then basically we use that as just one of the ways in which we're going to kind of trigger MTSS process and those additional supports on campus.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And I was wondering, Dr. Gandhi, how is it at PFA with the cameras on and cameras off? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So, you know, the camera conversation is a big conversation amongst the admin team. So, you know, the expectation is that the cameras are on. However, our students do have many other reasons as to why the cameras can't be on. Some of our students are struggling with mental health. And so because of that, we do make exceptions and we measure engagement when the students are off via the chat box, via the raising hand. And most of our students, when they enter breakout rooms, turn their cameras on. But sometimes it's just hard for our students that are struggling with their mental health to keep their cameras on. So it is the norm. However, we do make exceptions on a case-by-case basis.
Thanks.
Okay. I believe that takes us to the Star Academy report. Go, Amy.
All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. So this is kind of just an update for Star Academy for this year. And our theme is Brave Leaders, Superstar Learners. So we kind of did a play off of the NCS theme. And then our focus for this year, this is something that I showed every parent and I keep coming back to every time I have a presentation with my parents this year. So I feel like I've seen this several times, but it's just grounding us for this year that as we embark on this new school year during these unprecedented COVID-19 times, we all must strive to be brave leaders while guiding our superstar learners through strong instructional practices and standard-based curriculum. This year will be one of trying new things, being flexible, and building community through new ideas while providing stability for our students and families. And I really feel like this is something that we have stuck to between the strong instructional practices. We keep maintaining our standards-based curriculum, and we have been maximizing that word flexible and trying new things all the time, and then continuing to build our community and really trying to provide a stable environment for our students, families, and actually staff. And then just kind of an overview on the slides that I'm going to go through is what are we doing and where are we going? So we'll look at the structures, curriculum, and community involvement. So starting with structures, this was brought, or I at least first had seen it last year when we went into distance learning. The teaching and learning department talked about this quite a bit, and it's the Learn, Do, Connect model. And we really felt this represented what we do in the classroom. If you were to come in and see an actual live classroom in person, and we wanted the parents to be able to better understand our model that we built and what we were talking about. And this helped us relate it to them. So during the learn part is where students are connecting, whether it's with the whole class or the small group. And the teacher goes through instruction during that time. So anywhere between 10 to 20 minutes of instruction, especially our littler kids, they're a little bit shorter. Instructional times, their attention span isn't very long. And then this could also be through live and recorded instruction, depending on the subject matter. Our teachers are working together. And so some of the stuff I know in both second grade and in kindergarten offhand, some of their phonics is recorded. So that way the students can keep going back to it because that's part of that reading element and the foundational skills. And so they do that quite a bit. And then the do part, this is where the kids go and do their guided practice or independent practice. They might go into breakout groups with small groups and peer interactions. And then the connect, this is really important. This is where the students come back and they share that learning, and we're able to clarify things if they don't understand or figure out where we need to go next with them. Right, and then how I was talking about that we're trying to be very consistent with what we're doing with our students and really do the best we can to replicate what we would do in person. So this is our hybrid and distance learning schedule, and we did update it, I want to say it was right after fall break, because we found the need for teachers to have a little bit more prep time, especially when we move into hybrid, they're going to need that time. And we also wanted to offer our students that one-on-one small group opportunity during office hours so that they could get the support that they needed without having everybody else in the classroom. And that's really that targeted support that we would do during WIN potentially, or if you were in the classroom, the teachers had the time built in where they would work one-on-one or with some really small groups to target some areas of need. It might be areas that the students are struggling with, that they might be having some remedial skills. But you can see overall, our schedule is very, very consistent with what we do every year. All the elements are there for a regular school day that we would have last year, and hopefully moving forward whenever we can get back on campus. And then one other thing that's highlighted in here, our distance learning facilitators will also be running office hours, so we'll be able to accommodate even more students to get small group instruction or one-on-one support for each grade level. Social emotional support and connections. This is something that I mentioned in the previous presentation, that we have definitely had more parents reaching out with concerns around their child's mental health. And I think some of this comes about the students are usually on campus during the day and they may not see some of the things that are going on. One thing that we have heard quite a bit this year is ADHD. And parents feeling like their child can't focus, but a lot of that is really attributed to the situation that we're in. I know as adults, we even have a hard time sitting behind these Zoom calls for long periods of time. So think about a 6 or 7 year old or 5-year-old sitting behind a computer for 3 to 5 hours a day. It's a long time. And we're really trying to do our best to build stuff in to support them and also give that variation to keep the engagement up. But specifically for students, we have our Kind Kids Club, which is really where we focus on social emotional learning and building those skills. And Ms. Hines goes through every grade level every week and does different targeted lessons based on what she is hearing and seeing with the students. Sometimes the themes based on Kindness Month, I forgot which month that is, but we will do a theme there. She also works with our librarian and with our art and Spanish teachers, and they all collaborate to build off of each other for those SEL lessons, and how they can incorporate through the arts and how they can incorporate through the readings in that. We also do daily class meetings and have virtual office hours. We have our learning hubs going, and they will be back in January as soon as we can get them safely restarted. We have spirit weeks. I know this week several of the teachers have ones going and they're a lot of fun. School-wide mindfulness skills. This is something that Miss Shane is running for our site. And so she has a theme every month. The students have activities that they can do, and then they come in 1 week a month. She hosts grade level mindfulness meetings, and they get to work together with everybody from that grade level. And they're a lot of fun and very cute to see if you ever were to attend one. And then once again, we have that counseling support for the individual students. And then for families, we have virtual parent education nights, family nights. So Sammy Circuit has been one that we've done quite a bit this year. We have some other ones that we're trying to work on for later this year. counseling support for parents, whether they need resources or just navigating COVID right now and what we're going through and how to support their child. Weekly teacher updates and newsletters from myself. On top of that, there's also our regular feedback opportunities. We do surveys probably every other month-ish now, to see what are people or how are people feeling and where can we grow. And then the teachers are also sending those and getting that feedback. For curriculum, we are still using our Ready curriculum, but this year we went to a different version. Instead of just having Ready Math, we're doing Ready Classroom Math, which is an extension of what we were using, but instead of having to have individual parts or get resources from outside things, this is now an all-encompassing program. So if students need interventions or they need extension activities, it's actually built within the program, and that's really nice. And then it also has an online portion that helps mirror what has been done in the classroom for the lessons that day. So it just gives additional practice that's targeted for that area that they're learning about. We also are, oh, hold on. We are in our 3rd year of Ready Reading, and we are adjusting that to fit this distance learning format along with the math. And then this is our first full year using the Iready online instruction. Last year we used it for our SPED students. And in March, they actually gave us access for all of our students. And we have found a great deal of success with this with our students in closing those gaps of learning for the ones that are very consistent with using it. And it's recommended about 45 minutes for the week. So students have that built into their day that they can use this because it is showing great success for students getting targeted instruction for their areas of need. All right. And then this is just what I had already gone over with. I wasn't sure if my presentation was first or the other one. So once again, our Iready data is showing very, very similar to last year, both in fall and in winter for both areas of reading and math, which is great. And then once again, this is just kind of an overview, the same things that I've already gone over with. Our attendance rate is doing really well. We are making sure supports are in place, individualized plans for students who need that, whether for engagement or if they are needing academic supports. And then this is a fun, there we go. For community involvement, we have partnered with Jive, and this was a really fun contest that we did, and we had Miss Shane kind of take the lead on this for our students. So she worked with Jive to figure out what the contest parameters were, and then she introduced it to all of our students. So the students who were chosen, Jive was the one who picked them. And if you drive by campus, there's actually several big banners out for the students, and it really got them encouraged with being outside and motivated. And then this also played off of Jive's Walktober event that we participate in every year, but it added a lot of color since we don't have our students on campus. At least we can see stuff that they have created. So that's a lot of fun if you still drive by, if they're still up. Additional things that we're doing for community involvement, we had Red Ribbon Week where students participated in fun contests around making healthy choices. They came up with anywhere from pictures to videos, games, and presented. And so that was a lot of fun. We have done a parent workshop. This was a 2-night workshop, and it was around engagement and support for distance learning for parents. And we partnered with NorCal GLAD to put on this 2-night event. These are actually the group of women that provide all of our GLAD training for all of our students our teachers at Star Academy. So anytime a new teacher comes in, they get GLAD trained, and this is something new that they did. And we had parents that really, really found this very helpful, but they learned how to increase engagement of their student, support behavior issues, and for academic success in this distance learning model. And then our Novus group is up and going. And if you don't know what the Novus group is, it is a network of volunteers at Star Academy. And this is our parent group. And so this year they're really focusing on building community and then trying to do some fundraising for the school. So we've had some family nights out. They have meetings once a month, and then they're working on subcommittees that meet a little bit more often. And they're working to support our teachers and just bringing all of our families together and kind of making that network bigger. So if families need support, they have a group to reach out to in addition to those class grade level meetings once a month. And then once again, we have those mindfulness meetings with Ms. Shane every month where they do mindfulness education and activities. And it really helps develop the whole brain and students' understanding of their emotions and feelings, which is really important right now with our students a little bit more isolated at home. Even when they're in person, they have to figure out what are their emotions and how do they process those emotions in a safe and healthy way. And then where are we going? So in closure, kind of for moving forward and transitioning back to life after COVID, which hopefully is sooner than later, we really identified 3 priority areas. One is to reestablish our school community. So bringing back our big events that we do and social opportunities. Our families thrive off of those. Our Winter Fest that we always have. We've had our Sammy Circuit events that are big and in person. Those always have a huge turnout. We want to bring that stuff back where our families get to interact with each other and bringing them together. Another significant area that we want to focus on as we move forward is addressing the learning gaps and school readiness gaps. So thinking about our students that are going to come in, our kindergartners and our TKers many of them have never been on a school campus before. So we're going to have to think about that as they transition in, whether it is hopefully January, February, and then also going into next school year, the students who have been at other school sites and they're transitioning in, what does stuff look like for them? And the younger students are definitely an area that we're really going to have to focus on because they have missed their initial year-ish, if not a little bit more. Even our kinders from last year did not get a full year there. So putting a focus on those younger students when they're coming in. And then our best practices, this is where we say how to stay safe on campus, how to use the area appropriately. And we have to go back through this and re-norm what does it look like to be on campus. And we've updated that with COVID protocols, but then also transitioning when we can move fully back to a normal school year. So we're taking all of these things into account for that. And then finally, our social emotional support as we transition back to in-person and return to daily life and interacting with others. Students are going to have to learn how to do that. Even when they come back on this year, they're going to have to deal with a different reality. 6 feet apart is not what little kids are used to. They're used to being able to be right up by their friends, hug their teachers. And during COVID, that's not something we're going to be able to do. So providing them the supports that they need for transitioning to that. And then when we can get back to normal, also getting them to break away. Maybe we don't need to stand 6 feet apart from everybody, but having the systems and supports in place so the students can be successful as a whole, not just academically, but also social emotionally. And then that is all. So we hope that we can go out there and make another star and all be together. And thank you for your time this evening.
Thanks, Amy.
Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Wood, comments to share?
Yes, so for executive director comments, I have just a couple quick things. Application season has started. So tell all your friends that are interested in coming to Natomas Charter School for next year. I think the most important thing to really get out there is that if you are thinking you want to do independent study, to definitely make sure you turn in an application. We're going to be running lotteries at both PACT and VLA this year, which is not something that we've necessarily done in the past. So it is important. Winter break starts at the end of this week. If you didn't already have it on your calendar, so campus will be closed basically December 19th through January 3rd. And then, over winter break, I just want to reiterate, please stay home, please wear a mask, please don't have mixed household gatherings. We all want the kids back on campus as soon as possible. I think it's been mentioned at least a dozen times tonight, and we need our community, all the members of the public out there doing that. But I would just like to say that, yesterday was the 9-month anniversary of when we sent all of our students home. And it's pretty crazy to think about how innovative our group of teachers and staff and administrators and families and students too have been during that time period. And so I just want to close by saying thank you, to whether you're a board member, a parent, a staff member, a teacher, administrator, student watching right now. Just thank you for being all in through this entire pandemic and really thinking about how we can support kids and each other in different and creative ways. We definitely could not have gotten through the past 9 months without that and without each other. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wood. Let's see, board of director comments. Who wants to kick us off? I know we're a chatty group after 3 hours.
I will. I'll kick it off. I just wanted to say I commend, the teachers and the staff and everybody within the schools. Having a child at Star Academy, he sits right next to me when I'm doing my work. And so I recognize how much effort the teachers are putting into making sure the kids are learning and being involved, and it's pretty amazing to see what they're doing. It's been tough road for everyone, and to make this possible, it's pretty much been a great time for them to put everything together. So I commend them and thank you to them for putting so much time and effort. So kudos to them and all across academies, not just Star.
Absolutely. Maria, did you have something, or were you just echoing Preeti's comments?
Basically echoing. I'm just so impressed and grateful, that we're in this together, and just feeling like we've made it this far, as Joe pointed out, and we're going to go all the way, and hopefully it'll be better when we get back onto campus again. And so we can just pray that we do what's right for our families and our community. So I'm feeling very grateful, and thank you to everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. I can echo those comments. Thank you to our staff and our parents as well. Our students too, we know this isn't easy, and I'm sure there's just thousands of them listening to our board meeting tonight. But seriously though, it's hard on them, and I for those that are struggling, you're not alone, and we're all here to help you out, and one way or another we'll get through this. I'm sitting here listening to my children practice drumming in the other room, so maybe Dr. Gandhi and I need to have a chat about ensuring they don't end up in drumming again. I'm just kidding. Anybody else?
I just want to say thank you. I'm really grateful too for the Natomas Charter community, and everyone is just so thoughtful, with everything and trying new innovations. And I know you guys are reading and meeting and putting so much effort into this. And I know that we're all very grateful. So thank you for all your hard work. I hope you take a break and get away from the screen over the holiday, and just give your mind a break and get outside and take care of yourself and celebrate safely. And I know I will be thinking about how much I appreciate this community and being a part of it. So thanks.
All right. If there's nothing else, future board agenda items. Do I hear post-COVID school-wide barbecue?
That's definitely on Dr. Wood's list of things that we're going to do. So
excellent.
Stay tuned. I've been thinking a little bit about what's the big old welcome back party once we've all had our vaccinations and we can be next to each other in tight-knit groups again.
Yes. Well, sign me up for where I can help, including eating the barbecue. Let's see. I think that's it. I think if nobody objects, have a wonderful break. Enjoy the holidays. Keep your distance. Think of it as an opportunity to avoid relatives you don't want to see otherwise. Sorry, did I
Great
just
time to be an introvert. That's all I'm saying.
Did you just say that? No, I'm just joking.
No. I said relatives, not in-laws, Preeti. Okay, let's adjourn the meeting. Take care, everyone. Thank you for all your time tonight, and be safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, take care.
Thank
Have a
you.
good holiday.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Guys,
Happy
thanks.
holidays.
Happy
Adjourning
holidays.
at 8:43.
Bye. Oh, look at that. Oh,
So cute.
bye.
Get your baby some milk.
Amanda, it was cute to see your baby too.
You saw him. He was
Yeah.
like waiting for somebody to say hi to him, and nobody said hi to him. He was very disappointed. Alicia sent him a little message on the computer.
Oh, so
He's
cute.
still
I'm so
there,
big
Amanda?
now.
No, he's asleep.
Oh, okay. Well, don't
If he
wake
was
him.
still here, no. No.
All right. Well, tell him we said hi.
Yes, please. All
Bye,
right.
everyone.
Good night.
Everyone.
Thank you.